On today's episode of the CHGO Cubs podcast, Alex Bregman is a Red Sox. On today's episode of the CHGO Cubs podcast, Alex Bregman is a Red Sox. Where do the Cubs go, if anywhere, from here? Jed spoke about the budget, ownership, the rest of the roster. We will talk about all of that and more as we get ready for spring training on the CHGO Cubs podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Friday, is February 14th. No, I'd rather be with my Valentine's Day, Brendan.
Look at us. Look at us. You know, it's good to see you, Corey. It's a very romantic episode we have going on over here.
Yeah, sure. If that's how we want to phrase it. So, a lot to talk about on this episode. Sometimes in these spring training episodes, just kind of looking at video and, hey, this guy looked good, or, we saw an interesting interview the other day with Matthew Boyd. Kyle Tucker was there in Cubs camp on Thursday, I think, for the first time, and, Cubs gear, doing baseball stuff. But we've got a bunch of other stuff to talk about first. I want to talk about the Alex Bregman saga that is over. He is not a Chicago Cub. Where the Cubs go from there, if anywhere, the Matt Shaw of it all. I want to talk about a little bit about Jed's comments and the payroll stuff. Cody and Luke did an episode on Thursday where they really went through Jed's comments and really kind of reacted to it as the rest of the internet did. Altogether. So I would direct you there for, if you want a longer discussion on that. And then I want to talk about, again, Jed said, one of his comments was, we feel like this is pretty close to the group that we're going to have, maybe some minor moves, but the major stuff probably isn't going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. Talking about this team. If these are the 2025 Cubs, we're going to continue our conversation on those players and not a bunch of hypotheticals and stuff like that. But since we spent so much time talking about Alex Bregman, and then, Jed really openly talking financials on Thursday, kind of more openly than we've heard him, I think, really ever. I do want to touch on that a little bit so that you and I can offer our thoughts. So first, I'll throw it to you, Brendan. I think you and I were both into the Bregman thing on the right deal and, with the right parameters. With the way the Red Sox went about that, 3/120, but a good amount of money deferred, so AAV per year more in the 30 range. Cubs, depending on who you listen to, supposedly in the 115, 120 range. How'd you feel when that news broke? How'd you feel about it all?
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising they got outbid. That was always my assumption. I didn't realize the Red Sox would be the team doing this, but what happened was he went to the highest bidder. Yes, it's 3 years, 120. The present day value makes it $30 million per year. The Cubs offered 4 years, 115 for an annual rate of just over $28 million. Alex Bregman goes to the Red Sox. He gets an opt-out after each year. He'll be making present day value $30 million. He gets to play at a historical ballpark like Wrigley, but in Boston, on a team with a similar competitive window and a similar budget. So the Cubs lost out on $2 million per year. And the rationale for why they missed is it did not fit their budget. And it did not push Jed over the top, despite him asking for ownership to give out that deal and push their budget.
Yeah, so I think a lot of interesting stuff comes out of what Jed said on Thursday. The usual caveat that he's going to give to the media what he wants to get. Now, as a guy without a contract, Say again?
He's been more open lately.
Yeah, I mean,
Talking about his own
look, he doesn't have a
health, he's
contract
talking
on
about
this.
yeah.
So, maybe he is trying to offer some thoughts on maybe he feels hamstrung. Maybe he's saying what he wants to get the agents to think their money situation is a certain way. You never know.
Do you think he's justifying this behavior for his next employer? I'm not going to be too pessimistic over here.
I mean, at a certain point, what
Oh, sure.
reason do you have to continuously hide the 8 ball, right?
Yeah.
At some point, like, just say what's going on. But that's a different discussion. But I think one of the more interesting things that came out on Thursday was the aggressiveness for Bregman and the money that they were ready to commit. Whatever source you believe on that, somewhere in the range near $30 million that they were willing to go, or maybe slightly less, right? The key was Jed was making it seem as though that was for Alex Bregman and Alex Bregman only. Maybe other players earlier in the offseason, but at this point, it is not a situation where they have $30 million earmarked to spend before they break camp and head to Tokyo. It was $30 million that would have been pushing where their budget is for Alex Bregman, and they got the green light for that. So my initial thought on that, here's what I'm going to say blanketly, because I don't want to relitigate our thoughts on ownership, payroll, and all of these things. So I tweeted this, and this is how I feel about it. You guys, if you've been listening to us for any period of time, you know how we feel about all of this. I feel a couple things, the 3 things. One, with the way the franchise is valued, how much it's ballooned since they bought it, the real estate, all these investments, the ticket price, everything, the Ricketts should be spending more. They should be more aggressive. They should have been more aggressive years ago, etc. They should always be in the top 5 or so in payroll with the organization that they are. 2, if they are so hamstrung, and it's not just Tom being cheap, but they're hamstrung because they don't have the liquidity, or there's debt, or all these other things, then I think it's time the media, everybody, start directing some of this at Crane Kenning. If your business isn't cash flow positive, or you need to break even, and it's not just like billionaire greed at the top, why aren't we talking about how poorly the business is run then? If the money's not there, it seems like there'd be a lot of people that could succeed with the brand of the Chicago Cubs. And if every offseason we're having these conversations, maybe we direct some of the attention away from Tom and to the person who's making these deals, who's signing the RSN deal 10 years after that was an applicable thing for teams to be doing. My third thought is, even if all of that is true, to whatever degree, Jed Hoyer right now, at present, I believe has spent on his payroll $90 million more than the Milwaukee Brewers. Something in that range, depending on arbitration and all those other things. He has to be able to beat them, given that gap. Those are the things I feel. I don't want to relitigate it all bit by bit. Those are my general thoughts. And overall, every time a move like this gets made, Brendan, it turns into a dumpster fire of ownership and money and this and that. And I'm just like, those are my thoughts. They're always going to be my thoughts. There you go.
We've been doing this
So long.
5 years. Actually, date back to the Harper era for almost 7 years. Of course, yeah, the ownership should spend more money. To your point, if you're not cash flow positive where you are prohibited from giving out deferrals, it's justifiable to just ask why. How come that's happening? And if there's business operations to be optimized, of course, media, fans should question if that's possible. I don't frankly care anymore. I'm sick of talking about business operations. I care about just watching baseball.
Yeah.
Okay? I want to watch games on TV, listen to Pat Hughes, watch practice, watch games on the backfields. The likelihood is the Cubs get sold again in our lifetimes. The average lifespan for an owner is 10 to 15 years. Like, I don't care, dude. Like, in 15 years, maybe they will sell the team. They want to be generational owners. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Are we frustrated? Yes, but at some point, I want to get back to talking about baseball.
Well, and that was really why I ended up tweeting what I did on Thursday and just expressing that sentiment because I was watching video of Kyle Tucker. And I was like, I have literally spent half the day reading about the luxury tax.
I mean, that's a great point.
These things, and I'm like, you know what? Stop. I care about it deeply. You guys know, like, I'm a season ticket holder. Of course it pisses me off if they're not. If I'm paying a premium price and they're giving me a less than premium product, right? And we're breaking even and all biblical losses while they raise our prices and stuff like that. And it's my choice, right? Like, I know what I'm doing. But at the same time, of course I care deeply, but I was like, man, like, you're looking at Kyle Tucker, top 5 player in the league, or top 10, whatever you want to, you know. And I'm like sitting here thinking about how close they are to the luxury tax. It was a pullback moment where I was like, all right, hold on. Like, let's focus on the baseball. Let's try to enjoy this. Of course I care. And, you know, I'm in a part of the conversation, but
it's a balance. It's a balance. You can be upset because it does matter. Ownership, payroll, of course it matters. And then you can also balance yourself like, all right, what are we missing here? Because you're right. I saw Kyle Tucker put on the Cubs uniform for the first time today, or Cubs uniform for the first time today. He looks good in it. But you're right, it was not even in my mind. I was not even thinking about that. I saw Nico Horner taking ground balls. He shaved his head, by the way. Goodbye, long hair. The long hair with him and Swanson, no longer there. We're talking about money and deferrals and modern day value. I got my own tax problems to deal with over here. Okay? I don't need to be doing this during my hobby time, you know?
So, in addition to that, I will say on that note, given that they are imposing this budget and operating the way they are, I appreciated at least that the green light was given. Jed was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah,
this is
I mean,
worth
if you
it.
want to be optimistic about
This is what I want to do. And they said yes. Now, I don't have a problem with them not going to that level. I think I was pretty loudly banging the drum for Bregman. I liked the idea a lot. I liked the way it lifted this floor. But I think that level of commitment, I just don't think he's that guy. 31-year-old, trending downward, really good player. Again, like, I really wanted him. I was very disappointed that they didn't. But if $30 million with all the deferrals and stuff like that, that would have created problems for them, no question. And that's not, even considering the potential that, how he ages and if he doesn't opt out and things like that. And I just don't think he's that player worth creating this payroll and roster situation for. Once it gets to the level, even with the deferrals, I understand it, but $40 million a year, it's like, yeah, no, that's not the player for that. We've talked about a lot of players over the last few off seasons that I believe would represent, and Kyle Tucker will be one of them. Like, back up the truck, whatever it does to your payroll, etc., do it. It's the right thing to do. I think there was a point on Bregman, and the Cubs made a really solid offer. I don't like being the participation trophy winner, as the Cubs have been several times this offseason, but if they're operating in the real world and this is their budget, this is how they're going to do their finances, we have to as well, and that means that there's a limit on what is a good idea or not. And I think this at that level, to beat Boston, not just match them, but to beat them, to get them to come here, not a good idea.
You saw, though, if they are competitive, the range that they can spend too. So if they're in June and July and they're looking like true cut division contenders, they have maybe 25-30 million to work with. So that is one encouraging aspect. Yes, they missed out on.
Well,
yeah, hold on.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yes, they missed out on.
It'll be a long episode.
I know. Yes, they missed out on them, and maybe this decreases their chances of getting to a position where they will then spend that money in June and July. But if you want to look at this through rosy glasses, if that's even the term, I don't even know. But if you do want to be optimistic, that is a little bit of a window into their thinking process. Should they be competitive, which Fangraphs does not think they are, but Bakota thinks they're a 90-win team, maybe they will go out and make those big splashy moves, and not just one, but perhaps two, because they have that flexibility now.
Yeah, and You know, look, like I said, I feel pretty good about where the roster is. I think overall.
Define pretty good.
Uh,
Give me in your mind, like, where you put the Cubs Midwest right now.
I think like mid-high 80s, if enough goes right.
So let's rewind the tape. Let's say you're looking at your future self last October to right now. And you say, yeah, I feel pretty good with the mid-80s team.
Well,
you probably slap yourself in the
that's sort of why I say pretty good. I mean, I feel like looking at the NL Central and the way things have gone, I think they have the group, and I'm excited about their young guys. Overall, like, is the offseason where I wanted it at this present moment? No. The Kyle Tucker trade is a huge swing, great swing by Jed Hoyer, you know, an amazing move. But as you and I talked about it before, you know, at this point, they haven't even really fully allocated the money they got back from Cody Bellinger. And we talked before, even prior to the Bregman decision and stuff like that, like, I think there's a real argument to be made, like how they allocated this money. You know, they signed some old, like, oft-injured guys to fill some of these positions. At present, and we'll talk about this later in the show, you don't have any cushion for Matt Shaw at third base, and if he doesn't succeed or gets hurt, or you want to manage his playing time on a more careful, you have basically no good cushion.
And we'll talk about that cushion.
You didn't add a top of the rotation guy, and I do want to talk about a piece that came on Bleacher Nation as well from our friend Michael Ceramic, because I think it kind of illustrates these things. We're gonna have our first ad break here, but plenty more to talk about, and we're not done kind of on the Bregman Jet stuff. So when we come back in a second, we'll keep talking about that. Plenty to talk about here today. So let's hit our first ad break, and we will be back in a second.
Okay, cornbread hemp CBD. Looking for a healthier way to relieve aches and pains while getting a better night's sleep? Try Cornbread Hemp's USDA organic CBD gummies. Cornbread offers the first USDA organic CBD gummy in the USA. Their CBD gummies are the highest quality full spectrum gummies on the market. If you want to give cornbread a try, they're offering CHGO listeners 30% off their first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/CHGO and use promo code CHGO at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/CHGO and use code CHGO for 30% off your first order. This is the good life.
All right, Brendan. Let's keep talking. Let's finish our thoughts there, and we can kind of move on. I think the one thing, you know, as you were talking, yes, I want them to have money to use in season. I want them to be exploring at the trade deadline how to get better, et cetera, et cetera. But as you pointed out, the easiest response to that is like, well, if you find yourself in July not in a position to make those trades because you've performed poorly or not well enough to justify it, then isn't it going to be very easy to say, gee, wish they had spent that money to make the team better and come out of the gate and put themselves in that
They'll
position?
be judged on that.
Double-edged sword. Yeah.
They'll be judged on that.
Yeah.
The one other takeaway too before we go on here, which I can't wrap my head around, currently if you look at MLB Cox, they're projected for $210 million right now. So 2023, they finished a year with $230 million. Last year was $240. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the statements we heard today and the reports we heard that they're currently at budget now.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to understand is, are they around 210 to 215 now? And the only reason they would go above that 210, 215 is if they are competitive, because that's the case. But it does represent the payroll slash.
And a lot of people warned and worried about it. Yeah.
So that is one where I'm trying to understand if that is the correct interpretation. Are they actually slashing payroll while simultaneously trading for Kyle Tucker in Jed Hoyer's final year?
Well, and that's what this conversation all stems from. Like, maybe it didn't lay out clearly, but like when I was giving my three feelings and talking about all that stuff, it has nothing to do with Alex Bregman. It has to do with the information that we learned on Thursday and how they're kind of operating. Like that's the issue. It's not missing on Bregman or not going 40 million or whatever on Bregman. It's that potentially their budget is 20 to 30 million dollars less. Again,
Which
the math.
equates whose contract? Equates Cody Bellinger's contract. They just
Yeah, so it's like, why is a team of this market and this size
slashing
cutting payroll and setting a payroll that is lower than the previous 2 years? And 2 years ago, you'd argue, like, was certainly not as serious of an effort to win as this one should be. And you traded for Kyle Tucker and your presidents last year, et cetera. So that
and
was
went over the luxury tax last year.
right.
This
So
year in March.
that's where that all stems from. Like, they made a solid effort on Bregman. They made a good offer. I don't have a problem with them not meeting Boston at that. That's not what this all stems from. We're not talking about Tom or Crane Kenny or all this other stuff. It's like, because you're potentially slashing the budget, like that's where that's stemming from. That's the issue. The other thing that does concern me from the commentary was the public statement, and things can change, right? All of these philosophies can change. The organizational philosophy can change. The money can change. Everything can change. The organizational avoidance of deferred money was a bit of a, like, should I be alarmed about that kind of comment. Now, I'm not a financial expert, not a tax expert, any of this stuff. So if it's a sound decision or one they prefer for certain money reason, whatever, right? That's not what I'm talking about. What concerns me about that preemptively is if that is where the league is going to go, and the CBA is maybe going to deal with all this, it might mess everything up, you never know. But if that's how these big players are getting signed, and that's what's going into the structure of these contracts that ultimately are getting pen to paper, getting the player to sign with your team, outwardly saying, like, as an organization, we just don't believe in that, it represents one of those, similar to when we talked about the reluctance to do these super long-term deals. And again, I understand the logic. I totally understand where they're coming from in those beliefs. But sometimes, as we've discussed, if that's where the market is, you have to meet the market. The choice is to do what is necessary to get the player or not get the player. You don't often get to have your cake and eat it too. They have been able to do that in certain deals. They get the player they want on a shorter deal, opt-outs, whatever. But if these players are signing deals because these teams are going with this extra money that's deferred, to say you're not going to do that, it's like, okay, well then when you're ponying up for Kyle Tucker, you better hope the Yankees don't defer $200 million and steal him from you.
Well,
If that's where the league is going, Brendan, and on face value, it's like, okay, I mean, I would prefer that not be your philosophy.
we don't know the timeline of that squeeze. The TV deal hopefully is resolved by the end of the year. The new CBA, the ideas being exchanged will be clear at the end of the year.
Sure.
Is this going to be a long-term squeeze where they can't defer money now, next year, the following year, the year after that? Then, of course, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to work myself up over deferrals
I
when
mean,
we
I'm
don't know
not,
the
but
timeline of that.
just of the information we got, that was one of the things that jumped out to me is like, okay, but like if that's what it's taking to get these top guys, like,
Well, it's for the player. I mean, of course, it's mutually beneficial for the player and the team. For the player, you get your 30 million annual average present day value, right? So the way to look at that is 30 mil for Bregman versus 28 and a half for the Cubs. So yeah, it's 40 mil per year on paper, but it's really $30 million. You still beat the Cubs. From the Red Sox perspective, okay, you defer that money. You make more money over interest, over time. You may not be as liquid in the shortcoming, so you defer that money, you get more cash, and pay that way. The Cubs did that with John Lester, your boy John Lester. Cubs did that with Jason Haywood. That was one way they were able to get those guys, defer the money in the long term, and they're still paying those contracts today. A little bit of those contracts today. The way, if I were to guess why they're not willing to do that now, it would be because projecting revenue right now on February 14th, 2025 for the Cubs without certainty for their TV situation
Sure,
is
I get it,
uncomfortable
yeah.
for them. So that's what, yeah.
I get it, things can change. It it all just comes to, I think, at a certain point, like, even speaking of getting into, the whatever of it, but it just, yeah, at some point it would be nice to not just constantly have
I mean,
all
if
of
they
these
offered-
conversations about
Of
the-
course, if they offered
that's-
Bregman $31 million, he would have signed with the Cubs, dude. That's if it were 4 years, $130 million, he'd be in Mesa right now.
Yeah.
Deferral or no deferral?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So anyway, that's I think what we have to say about that. It's similar to stuff we've said in the past. I wish they spent to the moon. I wish they were number one. I wish they were always innovating on these contracts and stuff. And I wish Jed could beat the Brewers with an extra $75 to $100 million. I wish all of these things. As we go forward, especially as it relates to ownership, payroll, all these other things, like, to me, the proof is going to be in, if you're competitive at the deadline, you better spend that money, and you better do what you need to do to fix whatever holes show up and cement yourself as a team that's going to win the division, go to the playoffs, etc. And you better pony up for Kyle Tucker. Like, that's where the kind of like put your money where your mouth is kind of thing. Fine, if you're setting these budgets and the luxury tax and all this other stuff, but you traded for this big star, you've been talking about getting a big star, all this other stuff, you better do what it takes to keep it. Unless, somebody goes insane, there's nothing you can do about that. But I don't want to hear, this same, like, Bregman style conversation when we're talking about Kyle Tucker next offseason.
I feel that because they did offer that 20.5, Tucker was not closed off for those discussions in the future, which, again, if you want to be optimistic about this, that is one reason to be optimistic. They could have had Bregman on the books, despite the opt-outs, but on the books with negotiating for a contract extension in September for Kyle Tucker.
Yeah.
And that was not an hindrance for Jed to even propose it off of Bregman's camp.
Yeah, I mean, they got a green light for a big contract,
Yeah.
and so hopefully that means that they will have.
There's more green lights in the future.
If it's Jed's contract to be offering, we'll see about that. All right, so now it goes to where do we go from here? And there was a really good piece over with our friends at Bleacher Nation. Michael Cerami, one of our longest running guests, even back when it was just Brendan and I, wrote a good piece titled "The Cubs are one piece short, and I think they kind of know it." And I thought it was just a really thought-provoking article. And the basic premise is the Cubs were on record, right, as making big offers that in some cases are out of their comfort zone, very clearly, on a top reliever, Tanner Scott, on a top position player in Alex Bregman, and multiple starting pitchers, Roki Sasaki, the trade for Jesus Luzardo that was very heavily rumored, and some of these other rumors, you never know like what they were actually in on, et cetera, et cetera. There's clearly been a lot of smoke in these three areas. Now, Brendan, of all of those things, they did not get a top-level position player outside of Kyle Tucker. And I'm saying they were still pursuing that after Kyle Tucker. They did not get a front-line starting pitcher, and they did not get an absolute, lockdown, top-of-the-class reliever. So I just thought it was very interesting. Like, they were aggressively pursuing these things. The Tanner Scott offer is not something we have seen from this front office in a long time. And in terms of that level of money and years and commitment to a free agent reliever like that. And so it is interesting because now we find ourselves here, and they made adjustments to all of those areas of the team, but not at that level. And so I just thought it was a very interesting kind of premise from Michael that they were trying to upgrade these areas in a significant way, and they did not. They upgraded all of them in smaller ways, but not in the way that they were pretty aggressively and ready to be on the books, to commit to.
Yeah, the hope is those opportunities present themselves in June and July. And the projections map out where the Cubs think they are and where you and I think they are as well. Fangraphs has them as an 84 to 85 win team. Pagoda has them as a 90 to 91 win team. The truth probably is somewhere in the middle, and that truth is confounded by an error of about 14 wins. So they're in what I would describe as no man's land, where you have a coin flip at making the playoffs. Now, if you want to be a very optimistic person, well, great. Coin flip's awesome. If you want to be very pessimistic, then you can say, okay, I wish we were only one or two players away from being a 100-win team. I wish we were not an injury away of our team being derailed. And the way for that to happen is you're a 94, 95-win team on paper. You're in the tier that we've seen the Braves and Dodgers. But that's not possible as well. The Cubs know where they're at. We know where they're at. The way they get to the point of our aspirations is guys like Shaw do well. Matthew Boyd yields dividends. Kyle Hendricks. I saw him in the Angels today. I got Freudian slip. I miss you, Kyle. Jordan Wicks, Ben Brown, the young folks, they produce value, and you're at a point come June and July where you're getting value for pre-arbitration guys. That way you clean up where you can spend that money. And we're not spending money at $9 million, $10 million on Presley types per year, or looking at guys like Justin Turner or Markada and trying to shore up the back end depth because, frankly, you don't really need it that much. Or going out and trading Morel for Paredes and shifting that over for Kyle Tucker, yada yada, because you already have Shaw and Bush producing at under $1 million per year. Right? So we know where they're at. The aspirations are still realistically achievable. Just we hope that we can get there in June and July.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I am curious, I would like to see them still bring in someone that can play third base. I think I would have...
Love.
I thought you were shortstop.
I can play any position, man. That's so rest.
Yeah, Joe Madden. Style.
I can't play the outfield though.
Right.
Or pitch.
Because of the bum knee.
No, my glove's too small. Yeah.
I would feel not great. I'm totally fine with Matt Shaw, getting the runway to earn this job and have it be his job at third base, but I do not feel comfortable with the level of support they have at that position at this moment. John Birdie's fine, the guys they have, Workman, etc. Maybe they can fill in and play good defense, whatever it is. But if Shaw struggles, if Shaw gets hurt, if Craig Counsell in the front office, Matt Shaw's a hugely important player for this franchise, as you just laid out kind of specifically why. If you're getting a feeling of you know what, we want to sit him against some of these pitchers or some of these matchups. He's really struggling with guys that, throw a certain kind of pitch. And we want, he's in a groove right now. We don't want to break him out of that. You want them to have that flexibility if they need it. Or if there's some sort of bad scenario, right? And knock on wood, I got you, But, so I am not comfortable with where they're at right now. I think it's putting a lot of pressure on a very important young player in your organization, and if it doesn't go well, you're going to be starting what I would say is not a major league caliber starting third baseman as a result, which would be what? The third season
ever since you traded
of that? Wisdom had some good seasons.
Yeah, about one season, that was it.
Yeah. So that's my position. So when we come back from our second half break here, I do want to talk about, there's been, a little bit of Justin Turner smoke, Kana smoke, etc. Is that something of interest? Is the money there, I guess, is something we have to ask. But I would like to see them address that, and I will feel a little uncomfortable until they do. But we'll talk about that in a second when we get back from our ad break here.
But once you get it done, the most important part is the one one you need now, and the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products, and we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Okay, is there any better combination than Hooters and Chicago sports? What makes the original Hooters so special? It's simple. They care about their people, the food they serve, their guests, and their community. An experience like no other, based on years of hard work. Every Tuesday in February through the 25th, your wing cravings can make a difference. Hooters is donating a portion of chicken wing sales to Holy Family Schools, helping fund tuition, books, classroom supplies, and more for kids in under-resourced communities. With the support of Chicagoland's Hooters family, we've raised over $1 million since 1992. So let's keep it going, because kids can't fly without wings. We have hot wings, cold beer, your favorite cheerleaders, the Hooters girls. 9 out of 10 Hooter girls agree that eating Hooters wings while watching the game will help your team win. So cheer on your favorite teams from any of the 11 Chicagoland Hooters locations. Joliet, Delancey, Belmont Park, Oakland, O'Hare, Orlando Park, Schaumburg, Wall Street, wherever you're closest to. You can even order online if you're far away for delivery. Check them out at originalhooters.com. Okay, auto show deals are going on now at Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake. That means the latest vehicles you've been looking for are now priced with huge auto show savings of $11,000 off MSRP on new Chevy models. Or check out their selection of over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. With one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories, you're sure to find a perfect vehicle for you. And as one of the top selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, they're able to keep their prices competitive, so you know you'll get a great deal. Go see it for yourself. Visit our partner this February at their convenient location right now in Rush Road in Fox Lake. And don't miss out on their auto show sales event going on all month long. Be the star of the show and take $11,000 off MSRP today by shopping Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. Tax, title, license, and dock fees extra on select models. MSRP may not reflect the actual selling price. Combined Ray and Raymond inventory. See there for details. Offer expires February 28th.
All right, Brendan. So I want to talk about this, but I will tell you, and I think you might know this, a delicate topic, and I'll tell you why. In my entire life, I would say that I have never heard my mom, Diane Robbinsfield, express a level of vitriolic hatred toward a single player more than Justin Turner. And so when Bregman signed in Boston, texted her right away. I was like, hey, that guy Brendan and I have been talking about, not going to be a Cub. And I'm warning you now that there's talk, just talk, that maybe the Cubs pursue your arch enemy, Justin Turner.
What is she called? Justin Turner? Is there like a nickname?
Can't
say.
Yeah.
It has something to do with redhead, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Yeah, okay.
Well, because he's always had the beard that was, so she would say the guy with the big red beard on the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's exactly what she would say. Okay.
Yeah, a little more colorful.
Yeah.
Context, my mom has lived in LA for a long time, so she is in enemy territory as a Cubs fan. And Justin Turner, obviously, has been somewhat of a bane of our existence. So that would be a tough sell, Brendan. It'd be a tough sell. Tough sell. So just a sensitive subject over in the Friedman household. But I am into it. Now he hasn't been playing as
Well,
much.
do you hate your mom?
Hmm?
Do you hate your mom? You're into it?
I need the Cubs to get better.
I mean, is there any loyalty anymore?
He can
No
be our
loyalty
bad
to the
guy,
Friedman family? Huh?
I want the Cubs to win. If the Cubs are winning cures all, Brendan. My mom will figure out a way to support the team.
40-year-old Justin Turner here to the rescue.
Look, I would, I don't love, how little he's been playing third base and all that other stuff, but I think, he's been a good hitter in this league, even if last year was, not his best year in Toronto. But they just need somebody more worthy of MLB playing time at that position, or to spell Matt Shaw. Turner could spell Michael Bush at first base too. And yeah, like I said before the break, I do not feel comfortable about the third base situation behind Matt Shaw. And I think of the things that, we can talk about, they didn't get a top of the line starter, but they did add some depth, and what we think of that decision and that depth. Same with the bullpen. But I think the one thing that stands out for me as this is an egregious thing they need to address. It's some sort of legitimate depth at third base. They need to have someone on this team that they are comfortable with starting a good chunk of MLB games should that situation arise. And I hope that that's not the case. I'm all for Matt Shaw doing it. I believe in him. I'm very excited about Matt Shaw, but to not have a better contingency than John Birdie or Cowlis or whatever the Gage Workman, that's not going to do it. And I think would easily, if you ask me right now, what's the spot that gets this team into trouble or kind of derails what they hope goes right, I would be that something necessitates Matt Shaw not playing every day. And again, part of that can just be prioritizing his development for the good of him and the organization. And so if you're pitting those things against each other, that's not where you want to be with a rookie, and a rookie that's so important to this organization. So they don't need to, they never needed to go out and get even Alex Bregman. That wasn't the only solution, of course. But where it is now doesn't work for me.
So,
not my tempo.
So last year he signed a contract with Toronto, a 1-year, $13 million contract. At the time he was 39 years old. He got traded mid-season from Toronto. Now what he makes this season, maybe $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, somewhere in that tier. Third base market is not finished yet. No Arenado's being shopped around. So we'll see if he signs beforehand or after. It might take a week or 2 weeks as spring training progresses. But I'm looking at Turner, $2 to $4 million in that range. And I would probably guess it's under $3 million. So then the question is it worth it? Yeah, $3 million is cheap, but that is the price of an Andrew Chafin type reliever.
Right.
And that would be a price of maybe a 7th plus inning reliever at the trade deadline. He has, as we know, peripherals that age well. We've talked for years now about what makes guys age well. And those numbers are good chase rate, good contact rate, and some power reserve. So Turner has all that, and even Mark Canha has that as well. Canha has a contact rate well below league average, chase rate well better than league average. Turner has the same thing going on, and they're both 35 plus years old, Turner being 40 years old. So the question is, at what point will age strike them? Because we're entering a territory where we're not talking about a large pool of 40-year-olds. So I can't say, oh yeah, this is a great deal, because I don't have a reference point, because very few guys get to age 40. That being said, at age 39, we had a WRC plus of 117 in almost 550 plate
They're kind of split neutral. Less slug against righties, but 119 WRC plus against lefties, 116 against righties.
Yeah. And the year before that in Boston, same thing, 115 WRC plus and 630 plate appearances. So he is what he is. Now, third base is not an option. You pointed out, well, he doesn't play there that much. He's barely played there. I'm talking almost, 11 games in the past 2 years? So that is just not going to be maybe my expectation. They may force him there, even though he's not played there, but I don't think you sign him to get significant third base innings. If that's the case, then hopefully his defense is fine, but we don't have that as a base. How can I say to you, but how can I say to you that he has, how can I say to you, oh, Justin Turner can play third base on a daily basis or every other day when he hasn't done that in 2-3 years?
That's fair.
Right? So I don't know how I would feel about that. They would have to have some reason that's justifiable to think he can do that.
Yeah, look, I think that's absolutely fair, and I certainly couldn't tell you that I believe he could do it or whatever, but
But isn't that the crux of the issue though? If you want a third base depth, and your third base depth option is 40 years old and hasn't played defense in 3 years, what are we talking about here?
yeah, I mean, I suppose, I don't know, I guess in my head, if the situation got there, the idea would be that he's a solid enough bat, he can play first, obviously he can DH.
So
If
you
he
put
had
Bush
to
to
be
third
a
base?
corpse at third base for a day, he could, and he's not the, if the situation with Shaw necessitated it, you'd have to switch some things around. I don't know if Nico Warner's playing third base in that situation. Well, what's the
I know.
option?
It's
You
just,
know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but like, damn. Like, we're gonna, like, you know, the third
Well,
base.
this is where they're at.
We're gonna move the best middle infield to third base. We're gonna move Bush, who had a Gold Glove-esque year, according to Jet Hoyer, to third base. I'm just saying, it's not a good. It's
I
not
don't
an
know.
ideal situation.
Yeah, the reason that I would even go Turner or Kana, it's just like you'd hope that they can keep up as a solid enough bat to sort of supplement things and be filling in. Now we also heard potentially that they're thinking about trying Alexander Canario at first base to see if they can kind of get the depth there.
Okay.
That's another one where, listen, I get all of it. I do understand. It worked in some of these organizations, but it just feels like so many of these ideas, it's like, okay, you're a little late on this.
Right.
Like, we're going to teach him first base in 3 weeks. Like, this didn't dawn on anybody when you had nowhere to play him last
I mean,
year.
if they sign Turner, it's likely going to be more for first base depth. That's probably what it's going to be. Third base is going to be John Birdie. It's going to be Gage Workman. That's the depth, Corey. Like, you have, as much as we want proven major league talent, the most predictable trait is defense. That is always going to be the case. So here's a quote from Fangraphs that describes Gage Workman's defensive profile, and there's a reason why the Cubs took him in the Rule 5 draft. So this is the actual quote from Fangraphs. Workman has successfully moved up the defensive spectrum as a pro. He is now an above-average shortstop and a 70-grade glove at third. Workman's footwork and actions are incredible for a player his size. At a long torso at 6'4", he has remarkable body control and an impact arm. So Fangraphs, to put this into context, when 70 grade is given as a score, what they are meaning to say is that his defensive profile projects to be better than 85% of the league. Actually, more than that, I'm sorry, it's 2 standard deviations. Almost 95% of the league. So this is crazy to have a projection like that from a respectable outlet. Now, is that true? We'll see. But the Cubs are banking on depth in the form of John Birdie in a third form of depth option, and a guy who plays quality defense whose bat may be the worst in the league. But at least they have some form of defensive competency.
Does anyone have thoughts on last week's reading? Oh, Mr. Cox.
No, you. And... Oh, Tom, man. Thank you so much.
Form of defensive competency.
I suppose, I don't know, man. The situation there makes me uneasy. I think...
Go trade for Arenado.
I don't think I articulated it well, and that's on me. But I think in thinking of Turner, it at least provides the depth at first base, and then you feel sort of better if the situation with Shaw necessitates readjusting.
Of course, well, he can play third base too.
I do understand that Justin Turner cannot play. I wasn't suggesting he play 120 games at
I know,
third base.
but
It would lessen the burden if the third base situation needed changing, if you had someone who could hit, spell Michael Bush, DH if you have the at bats available,
Yeah.
etc.
Forgive me for not following Justin Turner's career, but when I looked him up on his third base games played, I was surprised. I thought he was still playing a little bit more third base. In fact, he's only played a dozen games in 2 years. That was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
So that being said, if he can be a corpse at third base, then yeah, he is depth. It's not crazy to suggest. And again, maybe I don't know the context in Toronto, the context in Boston at the time. I don't know all the context, but
Yeah,
maybe.
I guess he can't do it.
Well, you don't know. I mean, third base in Boston, he had Devers there, Toronto. Who knows, right? But maybe he could
Can
actually
he
do
just
it. Now,
stand there and Dansby, takes
well, that was the idea.
the left side
That
of
was
the
the idea with Madrigal.
Yeah.
He's got Madrigal crow hop and take 20 steps to first base. So that worked out fine for Madrigal.
Yeah.
Kind of confused some fans because they thought he was better than Matt Chapman for a few months, but it's okay. I can go trade for Madrigal.
I just, overall, I just think that, you have to have more of a cushion for the situation that you're potentially putting Matt Shaw in. And again, I say that as a big believer in Matt Shaw and someone who's confident in that. But there's just so much risk.
Well, let me pose a question.
So much extra burden that you put on him to succeed and
Let me pose a
play
question.
so many of those games.
Let me pose a question to you. So let's look at PCA's trajectory last year. So it doesn't make the open day roster, gets called up, a bunch of breaks his rib, has success, gets sent down, comes back up 10 days later, struggles, right? So if we look at PCA's profile in 2024, the argument could have been made that he could have gone through those struggles and played the entire year. Because at the end of the year, then it reversed. The offense success came, and the defense was always there. So the way I think about this, I know people want to be cautious with prospects. You want to break your best prospect. I might be inclined just to say, you know what? You're going to just rough this out. And if there's a 2-3 week stretch, a month stretch, where yeah, he's struggling offensively, does it require getting another guy in the 40-man to a trade? I don't know. We've seen how the 40-man is valued. I tend to think, too, that going through those struggles ends up allowing the player to adjust fast. And that's where I think PCA was able to have an advantage because he went through those struggles and he adjusted fast.
I agree with you. The problem is when those struggles are happening on a team that is trying to compete.
Well, it's over now, dude. Who do you want them to go get? We're talking about 40-year-old Justin Turner to play third.
Listen, I'm not.
Like, I'm talking
The
about
options
you
are the
go make a
options. I'm just
trade.
expressing the concern with the situation.
I know. I mean, like, do you go make a trade in, like, May and get a guy in the 40-man if
I think that's
Shaw's
the alternatively here, right? Like, not that they would base it on this. And, like, again, I can't be more effusive in my belief in Matt Shaw, right? But let's say it's a disaster of a spring training. Whatever that, then what?
You're thinking negative today, dude.
I remember at one point, I don't remember what interview it was or what it was for, but Theo talking about, kind of thinking of the things that would be the hurdles getting in the way of, like, punching your ticket to the playoffs and, like, what can kind of derail this train. And that just stands out as that spot. We talked a ton last week about the pitching depth and how they might address certain guys' innings limits and how, even if it's not the sexiest list of bullpen options and bullpen depth, like, there's a lot of guys there, and with the talent they have in their pitching department, they hopefully can squeeze out those 7-8 guys. But it just represents such a potential risk that they're taking.
And they're trying to offset that risk with John Burdi and Gage Workman. I'm not justifying that. I'm just trying to express how they're thinking about this. You're not going to get another player on this team between now and opening day unless you trade for Arenado and eat that money than John Burdi's projection. You're just not. It's not going to happen. So the likely scenario is we go April, May, and June. And if they struggle, So
and
be
I
it.
think kind of getting back to even the point, from Michael's article over at Bleacher Nation, doesn't this, I mean, they were going to pay $30 million for a guy to come in and play third base. Now, I know that potentially the plan is for him to play second base in Boston, but, the Cubs don't have Rafael Devers playing third base, so
That would be nice.
it would be nice. So it does sort of reflect that they were about to pay $30 million for a guy to come and play third base.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like they understand exactly what, we're putting out there. So, again, like, no, to be clear, like, I'm not advocating for Justin Turner playing third base for a significant period, if he can do it at all. But adding that infield depth and at least giving some insurance to Michael Busch over at first base, or just providing more flexibility of guys who can play somewhere in the infield and hit to some degree, lessens this. And it just feels like a very, like, but I do agree with you. Like, of course PCA benefited from the sort of roller coaster of it, like having those ups and downs and being given that leash by your manager and the organization to work through it, identify what you're working on, and have that time at the major league level is invaluable. But when you're trying to time that with also winning, and as we laid out, margins in the division and for your win projected are pretty thin. Like, do you have time for that? That's what the question becomes. Is like, sure, let Matt Shaw work through stuff. Like he's got to grow and develop as a player, but if you're in a dogfight with the Milwaukee Brewers for the division, like how much can you handle that? And then if the solution is like, well, hey, Shaw's struggling, we got to focus on winning the division. Get John Birdie in there. It's like,
Well,
okay,
that's what's going to happen.
okay, guys, sure.
That's what's going to happen, Corey. He's on the roster. It's going to be him or Gage Workman. I tend to believe within the next week, 2 weeks, Turner's going to be on the team. That's what I believe. I believe it will be him over Markana for the defensive flexibility that Turner does offer. Markana, first base, like you mentioned, third base. If you need a severe depth option, maybe he's better than what we're lending folks to believe, but he does have the defensive competency, if you want to call it that Kana does not offer. And if that's the case, you will enter the year with options including Birdie, Workman, Shaw, Turner, and Bush for your corners. Gruhan, if you want to buy into that, which is kind of a weird one, but he could be one of your options.
I do not, yeah.
Not many people do. And then maybe Canario surprises himself, dude. He becomes a first baseman. But those are your 5 guys who I just listed off. Now, I will say, if you're expecting a trade around the corner during June, July, don't expect it. The current free agents next year for third baseman are Kike Hernandez, likely not going to be traded from the Dodgers. Yoan Moncada from the Angels. If he has a surprise year, maybe the Angels are out of contention and they trade Moncada, but do you think he's going to be good? Well, probably not. When the Cubs would have maybe signed him. Donovan Solano, who I mentioned, he's 38 years old, $3.5 million. Maybe he's available. Eugenio Suarez, he's on the D-backs. They're left going to be competitive. And that's basically it, dude. So you have Moncada, Solano, and that's essentially it for presumed non-competitive teams. So if you want to trade for a third baseman, you're going to have to find a trade partner with a third baseman that's signed through 2026. And I don't know if those exist.
Yeah, tricky. Again, it's going to be Matt Shaw. It's just a question of the process to get him there and how it affects him and the overall team, and so that's where sort of my trepidation comes in. And it's also like, speaking of things we've spent endless amounts of time yammering on about, like, how many times are we going to do this with third base? Every year now?
Yeah.
And look, like, and it times very perfectly. We can put on our rose-colored glasses and talk about the future being bright, presented by our friends at Shady Rays. Use code CHGO at checkout for 35% off. Polarized sunglasses. We love our Shady Rays here at CHGO. Like, Matt Shaw is the future. Don't get it twisted. But, like, you're handing him the job, potentially, out of spring training and like not there's no depth there. And even across the diamonds, talking about Michael Bush, I like Michael Bush. I believe in Michael Bush. He didn't have a very good second half. Like if you end up in a scenario where Bush is struggling,
Well, you finish a little better, but you're right about that.
you know what I mean.
I do.
It just it just presents such a risk that I just don't love. And I think there was a lot of time in this offseason to address veteran depth, that would be quality depth.
Trey Mancini just signed for a 5-year deal.
Jeez. Sometimes they break their own rules. I'm not.
I know. Well, it's not a good news today. I don't tell you. Eric Hosmer's still available, probably.
Oh,
I know. Kill me.
yeah.
I'm not saying the other names. I'm gonna stop there.
So I don't know, and again I do. We talked about the pitching depth last week. Like I wish that they had gotten a top of the rotation guy. I think they need it. I think you'd be looking at a really strong rotation if they had made that move or been able to. And maybe that's the move that you hold out for at the deadline and see who's available and who you can plug into this rotation. I think they brought in enough depth in the bullpen. I wouldn't mind if they kept adding whatever money they do have left. Like, just bring in some more guys, see if you can shake it out. But yeah, the lack of quality insurance on this infield does scare me a little bit.
Well, if you want, since we're talking about being negative over here, you have Dansby Swanson, Nico.
Being negative, is it?
No, it's not. But we are talking about worst case outcomes. The worst case outcome is Bush regresses. The worst case outcome is Shaw goes through growing pains. And if that's the case, you have to subtract 4 total wins because both those guys are projected for 4 WAR.
So what makes the original Hooters so special? Everybody wants to know our secret recipe. The answer is simple. We care about our people, the food we serve, our guests, and the community around us. And this has been true since day one. We created a unique experience like no other. What you see is years of hard work. This is our family, and we're here
Mark.
to care.
Mark,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
What did you do with my drill bits?
Huh?
My drill bits
Always
in
original.
the black box.
Oh,
Drill
my.
bits.
4 total wins because both those guys are projected for 4 WAR. If that happens, your mid to upper 80 win team looks like 2023 and 2024. So we better not have that happen.
Yeah.
And if it does happen, then we need elevated ceilings of PCA and around the roster. And the concern that I also share, which I don't know if you can account for without spending money, is mid-middle infield surgery. We have Dansby Swanson coming back from core surgery. We have Nico Horner coming back from torn flexor surgery. So what are the likelihoods that they can't play as much as they did over the past couple of years? I'm not sure. I hurt my back waking up, getting out of bed. For Dansby Swanson to have a core surgery, I don't know what that does for him.
This is why it's high Alex Bregman.
It would have made a lot of sense. And the one last point I'll make about Bregman, and there has to be like a cutoff point. I understand that, but they only lost out on him and Tanner Scott by about $1.5 million. So yes, they did ask ownership for more money, and maybe this ownership putting the stake in the ground saying, hey, you cannot go past this exact threshold. But should Jed's infield struggle, and they had maybe a few more million, and he made the decision, you know what, I'm not going to spend 30, 25, or 31,
Well,
then this could determine if he gets that extension.
I hear you, dude. Listen, I mean, I think this is why, so many people react the way they do, like when they signed Colin Ray for $5 million. I remember some people freaking out about that.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was like, it's nothing against Colin Ray or if he can provide depth or whatever. It's that I don't trust that this $5 million doesn't matter somewhere down the line. And that's kind of what I was, saying earlier, where it's like how they've allocated this money. Like we talked about it. Like I'm very excited for Miguel Amaya to get this opportunity and to continue to try to build on the years that he's had. You know, he's gone through so much with injuries and things like that. Like, just to continue getting that work, like, I'm looking forward to him getting more of that opportunity. I think Carson Kelly raises that floor, you know, that you had last year with the catchers that they had in addition to Maya.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you have Ryan Brazier at $4.5 million. And again, maybe they're paying less with
It's
that.
less than that, yeah.
Okay, so you have Ryan Brazier at $3 million. You have Colin Ray at $8 million. Okay. You know, just saying, would you rather have those two guys or Alex Bregman and take the risk on one minor league signing for a reliever? I would take the Alex Bregman risk. So these are decisions.
If that is the applicable calculus, then yeah, I think, you know, this is one of those things. Let's see if they spend any more of the money. Let's see if they finish it. But, you know, there were a lot of people kind of today taking, you know, potentially the earned victory lap, you know, saying, like, I told you guys they were not going to reallocate all of that Bellinger money. You know, they were not just going to go out and spend all of it. Now they tried to. They were apparently very ready to spend more than that on Alex Bregman. And, you know, Tanner Scott would have pushed it there too. But, yeah, a lot of people, when they made some of these minor moves, even if it was $2, $3, $4 million, were like, okay, but like if that keeps you out of a potentially bigger thing, like, yeah, you know, and so
It ain't down here.
Like,
Don't find my shit.
I like the addition of Carson Kelly. I'm intrigued by Matt Boyd. Like, I think Colin Ray is a when you add by an agency and his own agency. If he wants to go to Boston, if he doesn't care about the present value, that's what he wants. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about that. Detroit offered more years. They offered a ton of money. It seemed like he didn't want to go there. He doesn't want to hit there. Like, there's not that much that front office can do to convince someone these are people. They can go wherever they want. But it does ultimately, it's going to be very easy as the season goes along to kind of look back in hindsight and say, okay, you know, like, this is where they chose to kind of like spread this apparently limited money around. Was that the right call? And it's literally going to earn or cost Jed a job.
We'll see.
At Granger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way. Offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional grade products. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
The team itself now is still in a healthy situation. And I don't want to have the recency bias of missing out Bregman cloud some of the reality.
Sure.
The reality is that this team is not a juggernaut World Series contender right now.
Correct.
They're also better than last year and the year before.
And a lot of other teams in this.
Yeah, the realistic outcome, or the outlook rather, is they're projected by systems to be upper 80s, at best 90, 91. And it's not hard to squint and see how it works out. And specifically at the pitching end, they're making bets that do make sense. Matthew Boyd's 39 innings of success is no fluke. The only way that backfires likely is if he's injured. Now, could he take a step back? Of course, but typically the reason that folks use stuff models like Stuff Plus is because it's more reliable and shorter samples to project the next year or the early months. And so the stuff he was showing looked like there was a degree of reliability. So should he stay healthy, then you have the pitcher we're talking about. And the fact that they've spent $14.5 million on Boyd suggests a high degree of confidence in that. And if that hits Corey and he is a 100 to 120 inning guy, then the value of that equates to over $20 million, and that is a good decision and puts the Cubs in good position. So you can see how it works out. Baseball, though, this is what it is. I don't look at an 88-win team any different than a 90-win team. I don't look at a 90-win team different than an 86, 87-win team. The way I fan is maybe different than you, but I look at those teams as all the same. I look at teams that are 93 plus, 94 plus, different than the 90-win team. And until the Cubs get to that point, then squeezing out my hair and ripping it out and being upset over all this, when the reality is it doesn't get you to that next tier win projections, it's not worth my energy. And it's not going to detract from the way I watch this team right now. It's going to be interesting. It will be intriguing. It'll be fun to watch these guys develop. I wish they were a 94-win team, but it does not take away from the possibility that they can achieve that. They're well within the air of achieving that.
Yeah, I agree.
And even signing Brugman, if you look at Fangraphs projections, let's say they're right on the 84 by Fangraphs, by the way, 84, that's insane. If they sign Brugman, you go up to 87, dude, right? Like, you're still not in that obvious territory.
Yeah.
And you can view the team basically the same, even with some of the uncertainty with Sean Bush and you've been describing.
That's all I want. I just want them to be in that obvious, like, this is a great team.
And so my hope is that Shaw does become that guy and Bush
That's the easiest way.
and the
Yeah.
pitching repeats. If that happens, you will get your wish.
Yeah.
And after PCA becomes a 7-win player this year too.
Minimum.
With that bleached and blue star hair.
Listen, I saw that. I'm like, I was like our guy Cody DeLindo. I mean, he's hitting 40 homers. He's stealing 1,000 bases. Like,
No.
let's go. I am rather excited for that. I think.
There's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot of storylines to follow this year. It brings us full circle because at the start we talked about, oh, we're doing the budget thing again, and we actually did do it again this episode. We kind of fell into that trap, but it does distract from some of the good trends of storylines. The PC storyline's amazing, dude. We have maybe a 5, 6, 7-win player on our hands. A flashy guy like that. The stuff with the bullpen's interesting. That represents the Cubs pitching infrastructure to get the next big free agent or international free agent guy. Third base, we have maybe Dustin Pedroia 2.0 at third base in that show. There's so many good storylines to follow. So I'm still excited to watch those. Yeah. And I'm not going to let myself fall victim to a lot of this, doom and gloom with the budget stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna clip that. I'm gonna send that to you the next time you send me an expletive-laced rant about the front office.
I didn't do that today. I didn't do that today.
It's gonna happen. It happens.
Of course it's gonna happen.
Every 2 weeks.
I'm not a normal fan. This is what being a fan's like,
I don't think we're capable of just. It's nice. It's a nice thought, but I don't think we're capable of just sitting back.
When I talk out loud, I'm not talking to listeners. I'm talking to myself. I'm like looking in the mirror right now, quite literally.
Yeah.
You
enjoy it. You enjoy baseball.
I'm talking about the budget.
You stop talking about the luxury tax right now.
That's right.
Yeah. No. Look, I ended my thoughts on social media today with like, listen, I just want to watch Kyle Tucker hit dingers and eat some hot dogs, and that's what I'm gonna do. I hope the Cubs
tomatoes on your hot dog, by the way.
What'd you say?
You don't put tomatoes on your hot dog. How did that start?
Ronnie, stay done. 2 times more durable, so you use less.
Now by Xfinity, dependable internet, unlimited mobile, and the TV you love.
I don't love it. I don't need it.
I mean, that's the thing. For the hot dogs, is the tomatoes.
I don't think that's the thing at all, but
I think it is.
Everybody
It has that citrus
Real
taste. Well, we go down the citrus category. You and I agree on that.
Yeah. So
All right.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It is an interesting. You and I have been talking about this team for a long time now, and it is interesting to talk
Yes.
about, yeah, the different cycles of talking about this team. And we have talked about a juggernaut preseason, during the season, winning the World Series in 2016.
Which we did, by the way,
Yes.
for Cubs.
John Lester and Jason Hayward did, and if they're still being paid today for it, great. I got no beef with that.
But the one thing I'll say, 10 seconds, 2016, on paper, 92 win projected team.
Yeah.
So we were not going into that year on paper as a juggernaut.
No,
We were
Needed
drunk
the
with
Mac
the
Shaw of the time to
we were drunk with delusion coming out with a better than expected 2015. So yes, I'll throw that to you.
Look, I hope so many things work out so swimmingly over a 2-3 year period as it did back then, but the odds are not very good, and it does not happen that way for a lot of organizations. So
I mean, we'll probably never see it again.
I was gonna say that it's an odd space to be in, that because of the way they operate and stuff like that, it forces some of the discussion to be. I don't think our discussion tonight was negative, so to speak. It's just reacting to the situation. I think there are a lot of people that are fans of this organization that would look at this offseason and say, outside of Tucker, this offseason sucked. They would be like, okay, Colin Ray, that's what you're selling me on? I think there are others that would say the depth is exciting, exactly what we've touched on here at the end. I'm excited for a lot of these young guys, and it doesn't all have to be squared against, are they the highest paid player in the league, this, that, and the other. It's just interesting, the different sort of versions of this that we've discussed, and how it changes the tone and tenor of all of the conversations that we have about them.
I don't think this tone is. I think this tone is going to be a distant memory. I think once the season starts, the spring training, even beforehand, progressing, the tone's going to change and be an obvious tone. If there's injuries, if not,
Last year, a lot of the conversation was about how they screwed up their base, basically the whole year.
Of course, but last year they rolled it back. This year they made significant changes. They traded away their big free agent signing from last season. So the storylines are a little bit different. If they out of the gate, if they go off to a hot start, then the tone changes. If they roll out of the gate in a negative start, then the tone changes in a negative way, and we hope they rebound for the third straight year again. So the discussion points on February 14th are going to change. They're going to change for the significant better, the significant worse. But the trends to watch don't take this away from the bad feeling right now, because the trends to watch are still interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, look, that's what I was saying when I was watching the video of Kyle Tucker today. I was like, listen, I gotta recenter myself.
I thought you were a big spring training guy. I thought you don't hear about that stuff.
I generally don't, but I've been waiting. I need Kyle Tucker in those Blues, and that was nice to see. Yeah. That's smart, and then I'll pay
Get those new Cubs hats. The rock and roll one.
Yeah, I don't mind the vibe. You're a much more, hard to please uniform guy than me.
I got issues. I'm hard to please about most things with the jerseys. I don't like the guitar. What are we doing with the guitar? I get the whole Chicago blues stuff. What are we talking about?
I don't know. When I looked at it, I was just like, this seems like something Eddie Vedder's probably into, so it works for me.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if he wears it, then maybe I'll get one. How about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I think that's all we have. It's a weird spot, and I think on a day like Thursday, I would allow all of us a little grace, even though I'm saying I'm bogged down in this too much. They were heavily involved on a huge contract for a pretty big time player over the last decade. I think it's okay for some people to have a strong reaction to that. It's a little weirder to me when the strong reactions come from things like Colin Ray or things like that. But at the time, now those people kind of look
Yeah, I told you
worried
so.
about this $5 million. Yeah. So, but yeah, like this was a big sweepstakes, so to speak. Like the Cubs laid out a huge offer for him. So I think it's okay to, have a little bit of a reaction to that.
I wonder if that's the biggest AAV outside of Otani they've ever offered. 30 million, right? This might be the biggest.
Perhaps, I don't
28
know,
and a half,
but,
whatever it is. So
hopefully,
Pete's Bellinger by 2
hopefully,
months.
maybe it was Jed. Let me dip a toe in the water here. Let me get the feel of what this is going to be like when I'm talking to Kyle Tucker in 8 months. Let me get a feel for throwing out a number that has a 3 or maybe a 4 in front of it on a yearly basis.
At least a 4.
But a little trial. But a little trial for Jed. How did that feel? How did that feel to write that big of a number down and sit there, say it on the phone? However he's submitting these things, I don't know.
You think he texted?
I don't know. He said in the interview today that him and Tom were like emailing and texting, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, Tom can do that. He knows how to work those computers.
His assistant probably does.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting off the rails here, but good conversation, I think. I'd like to see them do a little bit more. That's what it's good. I was really into the Bregman idea. I'm okay with them leveling off or, having kind of a, this is our breaking point type thing. But I think wherever they can continue to add depth, be it the rotation, the bullpen, or on the position side, I think they could use it. And I don't think that these will be dollars at this point if they're operating this way. I don't think that they'll regret trying to strengthen some of these
What's
areas.
weird? The Nick Pivetta signing. 4 years, $55 million? I thought for sure more than that.
You have the Kyoto attached to them.
I know he did. It's just weird. I didn't think it was gonna be that low. I thought it would be low, not that low.
Well, if you look at the market, some of these contracts that guys took, it wasn't really that surprising.
But also to the Padres, they were trying to shut payroll.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with anybody. So, yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes me think that Dylan Cease's coming with the Cubs. Now, I'm not gonna go there. Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
It does, make you realize we got a little over a month before the Cubs were playing real baseball against the Los Angeles Dodgers in Japan. And, we gotta take a look at the 2025 Chicago Cubs. We're getting to the point, we may not be there totally now, but getting to the point where, people are gonna be off the board, they're gonna be pressing forward with the group that they have. And, I'm looking forward to it. I wish this offseason were more substantial. I think there were ways to do that, and I wish, like you said, we were sitting here with a solidly, mid-90s projection or something like that we all felt, super confident, this team is winning this division, unless utter catastrophe. But, they didn't get there, but they did make the team better. Jed's taking some big swings, and if, all the budget stuff is true, and the thresholds are where they are, I think for a couple of years now, we haven't really known how to exactly evaluate all this. Especially listening to him on Thursday, it seems pretty clear. We have to evaluate Jed with the knowledge that he is not just being given this big bank of money to work with. He is very clearly been limited in certain things, and that's not necessarily a defensive him. It can also be a critique.
I'm holding out.
He's allocated the money, but it's just interesting.
What I'm doing this year is just waiting for the season to end before I give judgment for Jed. There's been points in time in the past 2 years where I text you, I'm done with this front office, right? But the infrastructure developmentally has been yielding fruits. Some of the moves they made have yielded fruits, and I think right now with the farm the way it is, with the possibilities, the range of outcomes being so wide, I'm telling myself, reserve judgment till the end of the year. And once October hits, I think it will, again, be pretty clear what the direction is, whether it be extending him or moving on. But I'm not going to try to put myself in like, oh, is he going to stay? Is he going to leave? Is it going to get extended until we see this play out?
Yeah, and play out it shall. So I think that's what we have for you. We'll see if there's signings as always. If there's an emergency show we need to do. I think most of those guys are off the board though. I don't think we're doing an emergency show for Justin Turner or Mark Conha, but I'll leave that to Cody if he wants to do an emergency show for those guys. But if we do CHGO Sports YouTube, we'll be live as quickly as we can. I wanted to do a show for Bregman, man. I was ready. I would have been pumped about that. Such is life.
And go straight for him. Boston struggles.
That contract.
Yeah. Boston was just, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to pay that $30 million after all.
Yeah. Brendan and I will talk to you again next week. As always, we appreciate the support. And we'll talk to you guys again soon. Thank you. And as always, go Cubs.
Anyone have thoughts on the reading from last week?
I'm ordering another round. I get discounts. Anyone want one?
I'll take one.
Too late.
When things go sideways, will you be ready? Meet the new Patriot Power Generator 1200, a solar generator that's lightweight, with more capacity and more life cycles, and recharges twice as fast, all at a fraction of the price. In a blackout, power lights, TVs, medical equipment, even your fridge. No gas, fumes, or noise. It's safe to use inside your home. This is a peace of mind. Get your new solar generator and free solar panel at forpatriots.com.
HGO Cubs podcast, the Bregman fallout. What happens next? Where do they pivot? Was it a blessing? And the questionable strategy from the top on down. We'll have you seeing stars like PCA's hair next. Chicago, what do you say? It's a CHGO Cubs podcast. It is Thursday, the 13th. The snow has settled, and so has Bregman Watch 2025. Luke Stuckmar, Cody Delmendo, and Sean Anderson are the ones and twos for us. See, the live YouTube chat is up and burning today because everybody's got an opinion about this Alex Bregman signing with the Boston Red Sox. Make sure you subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page. Best way to enjoy what we do is to get in that chat and be part of the show with us.
Send a super chat, we'll definitely read it.
And thumbs up.
Thumbs.
Did the thumbs up on the way in. I see 9 of you have done it already.
Please like the video. I know a lot of people, some people might be a little angry. I see Godfather's comments like, don't hit the down, like don't thumbs down us because of maybe you're upset about this result. At least hit the thumbs up for us.
And as Shane points out, sickos unite.
Sickos unite.
Here we are.
Here we are. Get a thumbs down the moment I say that.
And of course,
Thank you guys. Never change.
Hey, the news came on the 13th, so that's lucky.
Well, at least it wasn't a Friday, Luke.
That's right. Here's the deal. Bregman, 3 for 120. There's deferrals and an opt-out